Hello and welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charmley and this is another one of my videos of country churches. This is the first church I've done in this series. I believe it's in Yorkshire, North Yorkshire. As Yorkshire, of course, is an umbrella that covers several counties. It is North Yorkshire, famous for its romantic ruins, its castles, and its history of being invaded and attacked by the Scots. As anything further north you go in England, the more likely you are to be invaded by the Scots. This is the church at Allerton Mauleverer, to give it its full name. And this church covers everything from the Normans to the 19th century, with quite an emphasis on the Georgian. You can see behind me the Ten Commandments, Moses and Aaron. It's a beautiful building. It's not sadly used today for regular public worship. It's cared for by the Church's Conservation Trust, what used to be called the Redundant Churches Fund, and I'm old enough to remember it being called that, and sometimes my brain goes, Redundant Churches Fund. No, this is owned today by the Church's Conservation Trust, which preserves historic churches in England to be enjoyed for posterity. So it's a lovely building, this, and it's preserved. And they're not necessarily all that well cared for because the budget's got to go a long way and they're largely reliant on donations, and also cleaning is not a big thing with these sometimes. But we'll have a look around, and it's a beautiful building. It's lovely. It's being preserved. Now, another thing to mention is that this is a country house church. This is related to Allerton Hall, now known as Allerton Castle, and I believe originally known as Allerton Castle. The Mauleverers family, were here for centuries, and they've left their mark on this church. So have a look around and see the various things that are here to be seen. And so, of course, as usual, we start at the west end, because in this case that's where the entrance is, and that's, of course, where these historic churches, you're supposed to start at the west end. You can see immediately the commandment boards, the creed, and the Lord's Prayer. And this is an estate church. So it's a church where you've got seating for the big house family and their servants and tenant farmers. So we'll proceed up. You see we've got a central tower. That's quite a common thing in Norman churches. And there you've got your Norman arches. And then we've got here two aisles. And this is where it becomes rather interesting, because this is as I say, it's kind of a massive Georgian restoration, because you've got this lovely big Georgian font. It's quite a robust example of what's known as the birdbath style of font. We've got Georgian windows. The facade is really more neoclassical than anything else, but here we are. The aisles, they would originally have had seating in them, I expect, but now they have. Well, I say originally, I suspect the Georgians would have had benches in here, but they don't anymore. And we have here the memorials. This is really a transept here. You can see we've got these knights, typical medieval memorials. We've got a couple of late medieval people here. Indeed, a late medieval couple, faces somewhat battered. And then we've got these are wooden, of course. You've seen them before in some videos in Shropshire, these wooden knights. And, of course, if you paint them right, you can get the impression that they're made of stone, and wood is a lot cheaper. So we've got here, then these two are nice, expensive alabaster, and these two are wooden. And, of course, we've got to remember that whereas today we think of these memorials as being bare stone, originally, they wouldn't have been originally. They are painted in lifelike colours, and so whether it's stone or wood, you've got paint on the outside. This gentleman, you see the crossed legs. They used to think that this meant he was a crusader, but they now just think it's an artistic thing to make them look more alive. You see this chap's got his shield and he's drawing his sword, whereas this knight is praying, but he's still got his crossed legs, because again it's this look, I think it's just the artist showing off, I can do crossed legs, I don't have to have, and it goes out of fashion, and so you get these more sedate, recumbent tombs like this one. See there's the remains of a coffin, looks to be of child size. Now a stone coffin like that means high status, and it's a reminder that absolutely it didn't matter what your status was. Back in the day, infant mortality was a big thing. But you see here's with his kite-shaped shield, and so one of the things is, and I've said it before, you look at these, you've got the lady there in her wonderful pretty dress, and he's in his armour, and so we know a lot more about, so this, yeah, and here we have Sir John Mauleverer. So this is the other kind of medieval memorial, and again you've got your gentleman in his armour, knight in armour. This is Sir John Mauleverer, the knight, and his wife, and he died 30th of November 1400, so 1400 at there. And again, this is brass, of course, let into the floor. Originally it would have been shiny, but it's not anymore. And you can see here he's got his helm on, and she's got her pretty dress, and they've got their dogs. At this point, dogs were more fashionable than having a lion under the gentleman's feet. Both husband and wife had dogs. And of course, they would have had dogs originally. So here's the pulpit. It's a two-decker at the moment. I think it would have been a three-decker. And it looks to be either late Jacobean or early, the late 17th, early 18th century, basically. Very, very lovely. The candlesticks have been replaced with electric lights, which is quite common. And above you've got your sounding board. And here I think it is a sounding board. It's not a canopy to, although this look how good it is. It's to do with the acoustics. And you can see you've got some roof lights up here so we can see Moses and Aaron and the Commandments. Lovely 18th century painting here. And you see the little putty and winged heads basically there. And this would be the big house pew. This is where the big house family would have sat, directly opposite the pulpit. So they would, and then here this would be, I suspect that would actually be the rector's pew. So that would be where your minister's family would sit. And you've got a pulpit, and you'd have your, and it would have been a three-decker, I expect, a reading desk and a clerk's seat. And obviously the clerk's seat goes out of fashion. But this is a building that hasn't really been much Victorianised, thankfully. It's early 19th century, not late. So this is under the tower now. This is a Norman tower, and you've got doors either side which lead into vestries. Originally they would have been transepts, I expect. Little chancel, not a lot going in the chancel. This is Georgian chancels. You just come up here for communion. There's no robed and surpliced choir. And so there's this rather fun Georgian-type altar. You've got nice rails. I always like the rails. Lamp stands. You put your oil lamps in there. And you've got your nice Georgian-style altar with your yesus on it. And then up here you've got, it's interesting, the churches pictured there are actually this building. So this very church is illustrated in its east window, and that is 18th century glass by the look of it. You've got a Moses, crucifixion, but clearly it is local because it's this building is illustrated. So it's clearly done for this church. And then all the way west, and you've got this rather interesting sort of neoclassical, Romish, Normish facade, which this is rather fun. And of course the roof looks to me to be 19th century, fake hammer beam. But 19th century, maybe, I think so. But very good anyway. Nice big pew for the family, obviously. Say it's now redundant, so you haven't got, and you would have had, I suspect, originally canopy and curtains, so you could have a little bit of privacy. I'm not quite sure why you'd want that in the middle of a church service, but people did. This is another box pew. This is what I expect to have been for one of the tenant family, the tenant farmers, and you would rent your box pew. But during the war, this was used by members of the Royal Canadian Air Force No. 6 Bomber Group. They had the headquarters, the officers would have been at the big house, and they worshipped in the church here, 1943 to 45. And then we got a wonderful mausoleum. So catacomb contains the remains of Mrs. Mary Thornton, relict of Colonel William Thornton, member in the 3 successive Parliaments of York, most generous of mothers, and obviously it's him, not her. No women allowed in Parliament in those days. Most generous of mothers, most dutiful and affectionate of wives, and exclamation marks. Her abilities, vivacity, and sound sense were the admiration of all that knew her, and which she retained till the age of 84. Died 26th of October 1800, to perpetuate so great and good a character. This tomb is erected by her son, Lieutenant Colonel Thornton of Thornville Royal and of Falconer's Hall, both in the county of York. So you've got this lovely neoclassical mausoleum with its columns. And the catacomb, that means, of course, there's a tunnel underneath. And they would have been let down through the stones on the top there. And there we are, the pulpit. It's always interesting, you find these memorials here in places like this. And then this is, of course, the South Aisle. Yes, it's the South Aisle. Get confused when they got a West End entrance. It's not as confusing as a North Aisle entrance, because that really is confusing. That would be the hymn book shelf. As I say, it's not used anymore, sadly. So, and there's the veiled harmonium. So that is the inside here at Allerton Park, and it is a lovely example of a country house church. You will notice from these videos, if you watch any number of them, how often you've got a connection between the country house and the country church. And somewhere like this, the reason why it becomes redundant is that the country house really is sold up, the family is no longer here, and it ceases to be economical as a church, sadly. But it's preserved and it's kept, I say, back to the 12th century, possibly even the 11th century, actually, with that arch there. So really ancient, and it's just been extended and altered. And today it's a late Georgian building, really, a building that speaks of about 200 years ago. About 200 years ago, country churches looked a lot like this. Well, that's the inside. Let's go outside. So here we are outside. This is the West End, and you can see it's this nice, severe kind of norm-ish, i.e. it's trying to get to a Norman appearance. But it's got a sort of neoclassical Roman feel to it, because, of course, neoclassicism was something the Georgians loved. Well, we're on a road now, and this is only actually the drive to the house, but still people use it, so I don't want to do too much of the introduction on the road for obvious reasons. So let's have a look around the outside. And we're back where we were, the West End there, with its doorway, its big round window. Oh, yeah, here comes somebody. So we'll just cross the road again, because I don't want to be interrupted by the driver. I'll just grab the... and be careful on this. It's been raining, and obviously I don't want to slip over, because that would probably cripple me for life, even more so than right now. So here we go. We'll go round the south side. That's always the side that gets the most, almost always the side that gets the most light. And again, we've got these windows here. But there's a central tower, crossing tower, quite unusual. And something I think that some American people don't understand, really, is that cruciform churches are very unusual. Just because they're expensive to build, it's a tricky thing to do. There's a tower in the middle, and you can see there, transept, that's where the Thornton Mausoleum is. Mausoleum, of course, named for the famous tomb of King Mausolus, that was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. There's that funny tower, you see it grows kind of out of a smaller crossing. And because of these later transepts, you've got a rather odd ground plan. When you get round here, it's still... it's hard to tell that this is a Norman church, because it's just been so done over in the 18th century. Now, that's not a bad... well, in the Georgian era, it's not a bad thing, of course. Yes, this is going to be, again, a burial place for the family, big house family. Because this is very much a big house church. These nice table tombs, of course, the body is deep underneath. One of the things table tombs meant was that harder to pinch the body. That wasn't the main reason for doing them. The main reason for doing them is display. It's saying, I can afford to have a really posh tomb. And here we are, there's the east end from the outside. So just go around these tombs, being very, very careful, because again, falling over is not a good thing. Bit of a shock when you get to, I mean, I'm not that old, so, but still, old enough for falling over to be something where they do say, but that's another matter. I'll get back to the church anyway. Nicer topic. So there is the east end. And you've got your mausoleum there, that's why that window's blocked up. Whereas on the other side it's not, and of course that's where the knights are. That's where the effigies are. And typical, as I say, typical recumbent lying down effigies. And it's a lovely example, really, of a Norman church. The top of that tower is not Norman, it's Georgian. A Norman church has just been completely Georgianised. So that you look at it and you go, wow, this is... And it's unusual to find... One of the problems is that Victorians, being not that long after the Georgians, just thought, oh, the Georgians are boring. I mean, it's like the 14th century looks at the 13th century and goes, that's boring. Or the 13th century goes... I mean, the 13th century to the 12th century is very much... That's tiny, more than anything else. So this is a beautiful example, lovely building, one I think of the best. It's not very far from the A1 motorway. So as you zoom up north, the signs for Allerton Park, and this is Allerton Hall, and this is the church there. Well, it's just started to rain, so I'll swiftly make an end to the video, I think. Hello, Allerton Mauleverers. So there we go. This is one of my favourite churches in Yorkshire, in North Yorkshire. It's a beautiful building, and it's this business that this is a Georgian church, and they're very rare. Because the Victorians just thought, oh, they're boring, they're a bit modern. We want something that's a bit more medieval. Of course, the worst. Don't get me started on that one. So there we are. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I've enjoyed making it. I enjoyed my little holiday up here for a few weeks. You won't see this until I'm back, of course, but. Thanks for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.